Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
It's our literature unit, and we're back again for day 2. Day 1, we were covering the memoir, Rocket Boys, and we learned about Homer Hickam Jr., also known by his nickname Sonny, who grew up in West Virginia, a poor coal mining town. And we know that his father wasn't very excited for Sonny to become a coal miner himself because coal mining's dangerous. There's not a lot of money to be made. It hurts your health long term. It's bad on your lungs, we know. And his mother was always wanting her son to choose a different profession. And she got her wish, you could say. He became very interested in rockets and space and learning about how they work. And he formed a rocket club when he was in high school, and his buddies and Sonny together learned how to make better and better rockets over time. We found out through trial and error that he was able to come up with a design where he won a county fair, a state science fair, and then he won the whole kit and caboodle, as we like to say. He won the 1960 National Science Fair. Just in case any of you are interested, Homer Hickam Jr. is still alive. He was 79 the last time he looked. We were talking about him after we finished the program. Curious if he was still alive. He's still with us. So, yeah, it's kind of a cool story. Today we're going to continue talking about him. But we're going to focus more on some of the themes in the memoir Rocket Boys and learn more about what was going on during that period of time.
Okay, so let's get to it, everybody. Let's read through the entire contents of today's lesson, and we'll come back to discuss it.
Homer Hickam Jr., whose life is the subject of Rocket Boys, earned an industrial engineering degree from Virginia Tech and fought in the Vietnam War before becoming a civilian engineer for the U.S. Army. Hickam then worked as an aerospace engineer at NASA, concentrating on spacecraft design and astronaut training. He trained the first Japanese astronauts for the Space Shuttle Endeavour's second mission. Hickam retired from NASA in 1999 and has since written best-selling fiction and nonfiction books. The dominant motifs and themes in Hickam's memoir Rocket Boys are the Cold War and the space race, parents and children, and achieving one's dreams. The capitalist U.S. and communist Soviet Union were enemy global superpowers during the Cold War. The launch of Sputnik kicked off their decade-long space race. While Sonny's father finds rockets useless at first, he gradually embraces the value of such technology to the war effort and as a worthwhile career path. Sonny's parents play opposing roles in his quest. His mother knows he's capable of greatness, but his father is initially uninterested and even hostile toward his son's goals. However, Sonny aims to earn his father's respect by succeeding at rocket design and finally gains it at the last launch. The Rocket Club triumphs by persevering through many failed experiments. Although the boys face disadvantages, they work hard at a steady pace for years. One club member says, "A rocket won't fly unless somebody lights the fuse." This is both literally true and a metaphor, explaining that just having a dream isn't enough. It also takes hard work and innovation to realize a goal.
Okay, let's do it, everybody. Let's discuss the contents of today's lesson. Again, we're talking about Rocket Boys, a memoir of the start of the space race. If you don't have the time to read the book, then you can try to see the movie. And it's called October Sky. It's got a different title, but it's basically based on the same story. Now, here in the first paragraph for today, it says, Homer Hickam Jr., whose life is the subject of Rocket Boys, earned an industrial engineering degree from Virginia Tech and fought in the Vietnam War before becoming a civilian engineer for the U.S. Army. So that's kind of his life story in a nutshell there. This is Homer Hickam Jr., so of course you know from this name that his father father's name is Homer Hickam Sr., but here it's Junior, and he's referred to as Sonny in the book. And, of course, he earned a degree in engineering, in industrial engineering from Virginia Tech. And then he fought in Vietnam. And then when he returned from the Vietnam War, he became a civilian engineer for the U.S. Army. So I guess if you're working for the Army, you can either be enlisted in the Army as a soldier or an officer, but you could work for them as a civilian. You're not a member of the Army, but you work for them. You have a job for them. They are your employer, so that's why we use the word civilian. That means you're not military.
Right, so Hickam then worked as an aerospace engineer at NASA. NASA, of course, people probably have heard of NASA, is highly involved with rockets and space shuttles and getting into space. And there he was concentrating on spacecraft design, how to design whatever spacecrafts went into space, and he also was helping astronauts train to go into space. So if you're an astronaut, this is the word we use in America, or UK English is the same. They use the word astronaut to talk about a person who's trained to travel in a spacecraft or go into outer space. The Soviets use a different term. They're a cosmonaut. Of course, that's our translation of their word. But yeah, he was involved with not just rocket design or spacecraft design, but he was working with astronauts themselves.
Indeed. So that's what he did later on in life. He worked in spacecraft design and in training astronauts. And he trained the first Japanese astronauts for the Space Shuttle Endeavour's second mission. So, of course, you've got people coming from different countries who want to fly on the shuttle or on the Soviet Union's Soyuz or Russia's Soyuz or something. So they need to be trained. In this particular case, Homer Hickam Jr. trained those Japanese astronauts for the second mission of the Space Shuttle Endeavour. Remember, there were several different space shuttles with different names, and Hickam retired from NASA in 1999 and has since written best-selling fiction and non-fiction books. So he's still alive out there, and he's writing books. He's making a living from writing books, and Rocket Boys was one of those books. I think that's actually a trilogy. I think there are 3 books in that series.
Moving on to paragraph 2, it says the dominant or strongest motifs and themes in the memoir are the Cold War and the space race. Those are some of the themes and motifs. Parents and children is another theme you could talk about, and also achieving your dreams. Those are all important motifs and themes. Motif, we use that word to talk about a dominant idea in some sort of literary composition, I should say. But it also is a word we use to talk about decorative designs or patterns. For example, I know a friend who does henna designs, and she creates these beautiful motifs. You could use it that way too, but here we're talking about some of the themes that appear in his memoir. These are all pretty important. Now, we're describing the United States as being capitalist. We believe in people having control over their way of earning a living. The communist idea is that there's a central control over everybody, and only the people at the very top have any power. And that was what was happening in the Soviet Union at the time. So those two systems of governance are completely opposed. And so they were enemies for a great period of time. Even though we were on the same side during World War II, we fought with Russia during World War II against German Nazi soldiers and the Japanese as well. But then after the war ended, they chose this communism to live under, and America thought that was a bad way to go. So we became enemies at that point, and that's when the Cold War started and the space race.
Right, it was a war, but they didn't have any battles or anything. They were spying on each other. They had the space race, so that's why we call it the Cold War, and they built up their nuclear stockpiles. And, of course, they also had the space race. And parents and children and achieving one's dreams are also motifs and themes in this book. So, yes, you're going to learn a lot about the Cold War and the space race and relationships between parents and children. And then, of course, reaching your dreams. Okay, a lot of people don't reach their dreams, of course, but I guess Homer Hickam Jr. was able to reach his dream and eventually got his father's approval. Now, the capitalist U.S. and communist Soviet Union were enemy global superpowers during the Cold War. That we have already established here. Capitalism is all about free markets and money and things like that. Communism, of course, is central planning from the government with no freedom of speech and stuff like that. And, of course, they were enemies. They were superpowers during the Cold War. And then, of course, the Soviet Union fell, in the 1990s or something like that. And then the USA was the sole superpower for a while. But now China has emerged. So now we've got two big global superpowers now, China and the USA.
That's right. So the launch of Sputnik kicked off their decade-long space race. You kick something off by starting it. If you've ever seen American football, you know at the beginning of the game, someone is kicking that football down the field. That's the kickoff. And you know the game started. And we use this phrase, kick off, a verbal phrase, as we call them, to talk about starting something. You can kick off a campaign. You can kick off a party at night. Hey, let's kick off by, listening to our favorite song and having some pizza, whatever. So the launch of Sputnik kicked off their race, their space race, and it lasted for 10 years. Decade, of course, is a period of 10 years. Well, Sonny's father finds rockets useless at first. He thinks they're kind of dumb and a waste of time. And why aren't you working hard? He gradually or slowly over time embraces the value of such technology. If you embrace something, it could mean you're actually hugging somebody, but we also use it to talk about accepting something that maybe you didn't support before. So you accept or support some sort of belief, theory, some sort of change. And if you embrace it, you're pretty enthusiastic about it.
Exactly, and I guess he probably also lost face there because his son is actually going to be more successful than he is, but I guess at that point he accepts that reality, he embraces the value of such technology, and it's useful for the war effort against the Russians, and it's also a worthwhile career path. Worthwhile means it's worth your time. The amount of time and money you invest in it will give you sufficient results. So he thinks his son has actually chosen a wise career path. Okay, that brings us to the midway point in our lesson for today. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们昨天带大家先看一下《火箭男孩》这本小说的这个大纲，主要就是呢 Sunny 然后要作为这个火箭工程师，可是他的父亲一开始是拒绝的，觉得很危险。那么母亲呢，则是一直不断的鼓励。那么后来这个火箭男孩啊，其实他很成功诶，他后来就成为这个太空工程师，真的很厉害。那不过呢，这个火箭男孩的这个作者呢，出现在我们今天文章第一段的第一句的地方 ，Homer Hickam Jr. 其实这个故事呢，就是他自己的一个回忆录，就是他自己从小到大这个长大的一个过程。所以他的人生经历呢，就是他的故事的主轴。我们同样在第一段第一句的地方有看到补充说明的关系子句，可是我们看到关系词是 whose， 是一个所有格哦。先行词就是这个 Homer Hickam Jr.， 逗点之后的 whose 一直到逗点的地方，我们可以左右挂号起来。所以字面上就是 Homer Hickam Jr.， 而他的生活就是 Rocky Boys 这个小说的 subject， 就是这个主轴，就是这个主旨。那么 Hickam 因为之后呢，他后来在 NASA 担任航太工程师，也就是专门负责一些太空飞行器的设计啊，还有宇航员的培训。我们同样在第一段第二句话当中看到一个连接词 and 省略的分词构句。第二句这里其实有两个动词，第一个动词是 worked， 第二个动词在逗点之后本来应该是 and concentrated on something。 也就是说 Hickam 他的工作是什么，而他专门在做什么。这里的而 and 省略之后 concentrated 先换成 concentrating。 那说为什么要这样子做啊？因为其实两个动作同时发生的时候，我们习惯就会用分词构句，因为工作 worked as 它的身份是如何，同时就做什么，这两个动作呢其实是同时发生的，所以通常都会把 and 省略，然后让第二个动词变成动词 ing。那么后来 Hickam 在1999年从 NASA 退休之后呢，就写了小说，还有一些非小说类的书籍。那么 Hickam 他这个回忆录呢，其实主要的这个主题呢，就是冷战、太空竞赛、亲子关系以及追梦。而且我们知道 Sonny 他的父亲呢，一开始就会觉得说危险啦，而且什么发射什么火箭，这个一点都没有用。但是后来Sonny 的父亲渐渐接受这种技术对于战争投入的价值，而且他会觉得这是一个非常值得投入的一个行业。所以同样在第二段第4句的地方，我们看一下几个重点。第一，首先这里的 while 不是 when 的意思哦，而是 although 的意思，虽然。那你怎么知道呢？我们要根据上下文的文意来推测。虽然 Sonny 的父亲，后来呢，我们看到这里的有一个动词叫 find，在这里是不完全及物动词的用法哦。Find rocket useless， useless 是补语，补充说明这个受词的关系。虽然 Sonny 的父亲觉得 rockets 没有用，逗点前面的 at first 其实就隐含了一开始如何如何，但是事情有转变的意思。所以父亲后来也都还蛮支持 Sonny 在火箭上面的研究。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's continue with our lesson. Remember, we're talking about Homer Hickam Jr. and the various motifs and themes in the memoir Rocket Boys. It's talking about the Cold War, the space race, relationships between parents and children, and achieving your goals, achieving your dreams. Okay, now to continue here in the next paragraph, it says, Sonny's parents play opposing roles in his quest. Remember, early on, Sonny's father, Homer Hickam Sr., was opposed to Sonny doing things with rockets. He thought it was a waste of time. He should be preparing for his career as a coal miner, just like he was. And, of course, that's what the father wanted the son to do. But the mother was encouraging little Sonny there to actually pursue his dreams. Yeah, you know, aim higher. You don't have to be working in the dark coal mines. You're a smart boy. You can actually achieve great things in life.
So moving on to the next paragraph, it says Sonny's parents play opposing roles in his quest. If you've got people on opposite sides of an issue, they are playing opposing roles. They don't agree with each other. If you oppose something, you're in conflict with it, you disagree with it. And his parents were on opposite sides of this particular issue, you could say. His quest is just his dream, what he's trying to pursue. Your quest, we used it a lot when I was growing up to talk about, you know, this long journey somebody went on to discover themselves or maybe to find gold or some new area of the world. They would go on a quest. Or maybe you're reading a very old book about the medieval times. Maybe you have knights. They would go on quests for things. But that was his quest, you know, to find his role in life and to discover what he could do. He was trying to live out his dream, too. I think once he got excited about rockets, he decided that that would be his path in life. So Sonny's parents, of course, were on different sides of the issue. His mother kept encouraging him with his pursuit of rockets and making them better and better, while his father would say, stop wasting your time. You shouldn't be doing this, playing around with rockets. What a waste.
Yeah, his father was uninterested in rockets at the beginning initially. and he was even hostile towards his son's goals. Hostile means you're actually aggressive, you're maybe even violent sometimes, you use bad language, you're unfriendly about this, so he probably told his son, "You're wasting your time, son. Who wants to be a rocket science? You should concentrate on working in the mines and how to extract coal deposits and things like that." And Sonny aims to earn his father's respect, however, by succeeding at rocket design and finally gains it at the last launch. So Sonny continues to pursue his dreams, and he does want to earn his father's respect. That is still important to him. He wants to show his father that he's not wasting time learning more about rockets, and he succeeds in designing a rocket, and then he gains his father's respect at the not the first launch, but the last launch, when his father said, "Well, son, I agree. What you're doing is not a waste of time. Why don't you let me actually light this rocket as a way to say I approve of what you've done, and maybe as a way to say sorry for disapproving of your career choice."
Yeah, he really did a 180, you could say, in how he treated his son and Sonny's interest in rockets. He went from being completely opposed to it and hostile, meaning he was kind of angry about it, to actually supporting his son and saying, "Oh, you're pretty good at this. Maybe you should keep pursuing this path in life." So if someone's hostile, they seem to be very angry towards you. A hostile dog is a dog you want to avoid. That dog probably wants to attack you if it's behaving in a hostile way or a hostile manner. So his dad did a 180, changed, and at the end, it's kind of this wonderful scene of his dad accepting what he's been doing and his dad even kind of being proud of him. And in the final paragraph, it says the Rocket Club triumphs or succeeds by persevering through many failed experiments. They had a lot of accidents, a lot of rockets that didn't launch, but they didn't give up. They kept going forward. If you persevere, you're somebody who doesn't just give up when you face a little bit of trouble or difficulty. You are very determined and you keep going forward. You work hard no matter what people say to you. There will always be people in your life that tell you you can't do something. But if you really work hard and you believe in yourself, you can make a lot of progress and even be successful at what you want. But you need to be practical too. I've seen people who want to become a famous singer who can't sing at all. So let's be realistic about those sorts of talents. But if you do have some talent and you work hard, find someone who will be a good supporter of your goals and ignore the rest of the folks.
Yeah, it's important to be optimistic, but also realistic. And of course, if you persevere, you might succeed. You might not always succeed, but still, if you want to succeed, you do need to persevere. You need to keep continuing. You need to pursue that course of action, even though it's difficult and you're going to fail along the way. And although the boys face disadvantages, they work hard at a steady pace for years. They did not give up. A lot of people try something for a while, and maybe after a month or two, they realize that it's going to take a lot of work to be good at that thing, and they're not confident whether they can or not. So they forget about it and start pursuing something else. But these boys, they were determined. They knew what they wanted in life, and so they worked hard at a steady pace for years, and they were realistic. They knew that it wasn't going to be an overnight success, that it would take a long time.
They did, but they were willing to pay the price for success. So we see that one club member, one of the Rocket Boys, actually has this quote, "A rocket won't fly unless someone lights the fuse." Now, if you've ever lit, let's say, a firecracker, there's that long piece of it looks like string, and you light the end of it, and it gives you a couple of minutes, well, seconds, I guess, if the fuse is short. It gives you a couple of seconds to throw it or drop it so you don't get burned or hurt from that explosion. That's what a fuse is. So they probably had that long string that connected to their rocket. They'd light it, and then they'd run away as fast as they could before the rocket took off because there's a little bit of an explosion.
A very common firework during Chinese New Year is the bottle rocket, and you set it in a bottle, then you light the fuse, and then it gives you maybe 2 or 3 seconds to get away, and then it goes blows up in mid-air. So yes, in order to get that firework to work, you've got to light the fuse. And yes, indeed, a rocket won't fly unless somebody lights the fuse. And this is both literally true and a metaphor, explaining that just having a dream isn't enough. It also takes hard work and innovation to realize a goal. So if it's literally true, that means yes, if you want the bottle rocket to fly into the air and blow up, you do need to light the fuse. But it's also a metaphor, which is when you use some kind of description like that to talk about a larger concept in life to apply to life. So you're not really lighting the fuse of the rocket, you're lighting the fuse of your dream, for example, which basically means you have hard work and innovation. And that's what the fuse is, working hard and coming up with new ideas. And then you'll realize your goal. That will be the rocket flying off the launch pad and going into space. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's turn things over now to our Chinese teacher.
所以桑尼一开始呢，他父亲在他追求梦想的这个道路上，这个 quest 上面呢，是一个对立的角色，但是他的母亲却一直都还蛮支持他的。不过后来桑尼的目标，因为桑尼呢，他会觉得说他的目标就是要透过在火箭上面的设计取得成功，来赢得父亲对他的尊重，所以呢，在最后一次呢，就实现了这样子的一个梦想。好，我们来看一下第3段第4句的地方，在这里有一个动词加 by doing something， 表示借由某一个动作来完成某一件事情的用法。我们在第4句看到的动词是 aims to do something， 目标希望能赢得父亲的 respect。By doing something, by succeeding at rocket design. 所以 by 加动词 ing 就有借由某一件事情来完成另外一件事情的意思。同样在第4段第1句的地方，我们也看到这样的句型 by persevering， 借由 persevering through many failed experiments。好，那 by 前面动词呢是 triumph， 它可以当成成功的意思，借由坚持不懈取得成功。好，那么接下来呢，我们看到的是在整个这个故事当中啊，其实这好几个小男生都面临了很多的困难跟劣势，不过他们的步调都一直很稳定，他们一直都不断的稳定，在稳定当中求进步。同样在第4段第2句这个地方，我们看到一个速度这个字叫做 pace， P-A-C-E， 特别注意不管是用 speed 还是 pace， 它前面的介系词都会搭配 at a steady pace， 所以在这个稳定当中呢，求进步，不管是字面上还是这个隐喻呢，都可以告诉我们，光有梦想不够，我们还要这个 slow and steady wins the race， 还要透过我们的努力跟创造力才能够实现梦想哦。所以有空的时候，大家或许也可以到图书馆把《火箭男孩》这本书来读看看，其实可以鼓励大家往自己的梦想去追求。以上是我们今天的内容，我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it for today, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we have encouraged you to pursue a career in rocket science. From all of us here at English Digest, my name is Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.